I'm waiting, Cloud.
It is no secret that Final Fantasy VII is one of my favourite games ever. Playing and reviewing the Final Fantasy VII Remake was a really special experience for me, and if it's possible, reviewing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth feels even more so. I mean, we didn't really know what to expect with Remake, but now that bar is set, and even though I did have some issues with its ending, getting to spend that time in that beautifully reconstructed world with perfectly recreated characters so close to my heart just made me even more excited for the story beats we'd get to experience in Rebirth, for the people we'd meet and the places we'd go. Now, 4 years after reviewing Remake, Rebirth is here and I am so pleased to say it has been worth the wait. But let's go into a tiny bit more detail than that. Here's my review of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Also, just FYI, this review is spoiler free and it only contains footage from the first few chapters of the game, going no further than the grasslands. So nothing that hasn't already been seen in demos and story trailers. Enjoy! Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is huge. I mean, it is unbelievably big. So big that I'm about 50 hours in, and I am nowhere near finished yet. For context, however, I have been pretty thorough with side content, of which there is a ton, but we will get to that in a little bit. Just know that this is a review in progress of sorts, and in the interests of really fully exploring everything Rebirth has to offer, and not spoiling the experience by rushing through it, I've yet to see events from the last couple of locations in the game and, of course, the ending. But what I've played so far has been a joy. Rebirth continues the level of quality, polish, attention to detail and love for the original game as initially set out in Final Fantasy VII Remake. And then it adds an eye-wateringly huge amount of stuff on top of that. The party have left the oppressive and claustrophobic city of Midgar, and the rest of the world is now theirs, and yours, to explore. Rebirth is much less linear than Remake, but it still follows a fairly prescriptive path in its initial chapters. Arrive in a new area, map it out with the aid of returning robot Chadley's communication tower network, scope out available new activities, unlock local transportation options, be that chocobo or something a little faster, make your way through all the optional side content, and then face off against a boss or two to advance the party's journey and also the story. Now, that seems a little dull on paper, particularly since unlocking content via comms towers in 2024 seems pretty tired, but it rarely is in practice. Thanks to how wildly varied quests are, how beautifully satisfying combat is, and how spot on the game's core performances continue to be. The entire party is wonderful, but special shout out has to go to John Bentley as Bard Wallace and Susie Young as Yuffie Kizaragi. As fans of the original know, we get a bit more of Bard's backstory in Corel, and I'm not ashamed to admit I shed a few tears. Meanwhile, Yuffie's boundless energy and unflappable confidence bring often needed lightness to the party. An exchange she has with Cloud regarding which party members they could clone had me absolutely rolling. But honestly, everyone is brilliant here, and their deepening relationships are underscored by new mechanics that react to just that. As you work with specific party members on side quests, as you seek them out for conversation, or even if you fight with them side by side using the new synergy system, your bond with them will become stronger. And yes, this will affect who spends time with Cloud in the Gold Saucer, but it's also just quite nice from a story perspective. Seeing this group of disparate people with similar goals find common ground with one another, learning to support and encourage their new friends along the way. Separate to this is a new party leveling system, where you're granted XP through quests, and which works to unlock new unique spells and abilities for each party member via their folios. This is another new addition, essentially a sphere grid style leveling system, unique to each character, where they'll get access to new stats, attacks, and abilities over time. This includes the separate synergy skills and synergy abilities, where characters can team up to attack, to boost their defense, increase an enemy's stagger, or even make magic spells free for a short amount of time. Plus, seeing new synergy abilities play out is always just really, really fun. And that's the main takeaway from the updated combat system, to be honest. It's a lot of fun. The basic controls are all just the same as with Remake. No need to fix what was working just fine. But there are some small tweaks that keep things interesting. In addition to spells, most characters will now have access to elemental abilities that don't require MP to cast, but rather just one ATB slot. The damage these abilities do is negligible compared to actual spells, so you wouldn't rely on them to totally change the tide of a battle, but they're just quite nice to have on hand for, say, pressuring an enemy when you don't have the right materia equipped. The other trade-off for using them, as well as the weaker damage, is that they often don't give the controlled character a synergy point, and these are now often what you'll be basing battle strategies around for flashier wins. The synergy system is clever in that it further encourages players to switch up their controlled character as much as possible. Certain individual actions during a battle, like unique weapon abilities, spells, and more, will grant a character a synergy point, and two characters must have a minimum number of points between them before a synergy attack becomes available. So, they take a little while to build up to. Like summons, you won't be pulling these out for a scrap with a Grasslands Wolf. But they deal considerable damage and they provide crucial character buffs that really do make it feel like these are moves that can only be pulled out in the most adrenaline-fueled circumstances. On that note, now that the party is bigger and travelling together most of the time, you'll see the characters not currently controlled in battle hovering around the edges of combat, and even throwing in a little attack now and then. They can be called in as backline support when you really are almost at the point of defeat. And again, it can be just the push you need to see a fight over the line. Everything just works quite beautifully together. So much so that you'll probably be itching for your first big fight and more challenging enemies to really get your teeth into the full range of systems in Flow. Mind you, outside of combat is just as busy. There are piano recitals to play, absurd photo relic side quests to do, life springs to scan to find out more information on a region, dig sites to investigate and scratch through with the help of a chocobo, treasure caches to find, bus stops to repair, materia to develop, so many fun things to do, and that is long before you get anywhere near the gold saucer. Perhaps my favourite of these activities though is Queen's Blood, a new card game within the game that is just designed and executed very, very well. Now honestly, I really don't normally bother with these kinds of mini-games past the obligatory rounds within the main campaign, but seeking out new Queen's Blood players became one of the first things I did in a new area. And it does say a lot that even when the game popped up in small ways tangentially to the main quest, it felt natural for it to be there, and not forced in any way. Plus that music never gets old. The sheer size and scale of content in a new area can sometimes work against the game though. It is incredibly overwhelming when you first arrive in a new area like Corel or Gongaga and see just how much there is to do before you can move ahead with the story. I mean, yeah, okay, you don't have to do anything of course, but most players will want to, even if they are keen to continue the main quest, because of the rewards on offer. It can just create what feels a bit like a pacing issue. Why are we over here scanning these rocks when we're supposed to be in hot pursuit of, you know? Don't get me wrong, this issue really is tiny in the grand scheme of things when you're having so much fun playing Rocket League but with animals, or driving a wheelie along the beach, or ziplining your way across the coast, or, I don't know, getting sucked into a game Jumanji style. Even when the pacing falters, everything is simply too charming and too fun to be upset about spending a little bit more time in this world. Now, like I said at the top of the video, this is all based on impressions partway through the game. 50 hours in and still nowhere near the finish line. But given how engrossing it's been so far, I feel fairly confident in saying this is a strong continuation of the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy, no matter what ends up happening in the Forgotten Capital.
What does he want now?
Final Fantasy VII is a game for the ages, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a worthy continuation of that legacy. How it handles key moments of that legacy we can't talk about here today, but maybe that's a chat for another time. A reunion, perhaps.
Sephiroth!
Look out for new Final Fantasy VII Rebirth videos coming very, very soon. Until then, I don't know, maybe keep a Phoenix down handy. Thanks for watching. Bye!